Now this is a new form of warfare. We can see how disciplined they are, controlling the horses, keeping in rank and file. They had a strict command structure within the Conroy, and even though they were knights or sergeants themselves, they would take their orders from the commander of the Conroy. And it was this discipline that made them such an effective fighting force on the battlefield. But also, they have an advantage over their Saxon enemy. They are mounted on horses. In Roman times, the Romans did not have stirrups. Though they had saddles that you would literally sit in like an armchair and they would hold you on the horse, you still have an advantage with stirrups, that you can stand up in the stirrups and still stay mounted on the horseback, which gives you a huge advantage of height over your opponent. Now these Norman knights, we can now see showing the advantage of speed. They can move around the battlefield very quickly indeed, manoeuvring from column to line, line to column. Conroy would have approximately 50 knights and sergeants in it, and there were approximately 2,000 to 3,000 mounted Norman knights and sergeants at the Battle of Hastings on that day in 1066. And this must have been a very frightening sight to the Saxon English soldiers at the top of the hill. Many of them would not have seen a mounted warrior, a knight. They would have been used to seeing the enemy on foot, but seeing the enemy mounted and moving so quickly would have been a daunting and frightening sight for them. And we can now see the Normans using their spears as lances. You can imagine the kinetic energy of that horse and that rider all going into the tip of that lance. You could skewer your enemy even though he were wearing a mailed shirt. Spear. They would also carry a sword, and in fact it was the sword that was the badge of their rank, their social rank as knights. Metal was still a rare commodity, and to use so much metal to make a sword was a demonstration of wealth, and it was a very, very terrible weapon indeed. But they also have defensive weapons. They have their mailed shirt, made up of over 10,000 individual rings that are literally knitted together to protect the body. They also wear a helm upon their head, the classic Norman helmet that we see, and they also all carry a kite shape. We can now see our knights formed into line, and the degree of skill needed to keep those horses under control and to manoeuvre, as you can see here, it is magnificent. Again, we see the Conroy easily moving up the hill here, and that's the exact sight you would have seen if you'd have stood here on that day in October 1066. And this is a testimony to the hard work that these reenactors have done to be able to recreate this Norman cavalry Conroy with such accuracy. They've worked almost as hard as the Norman knights did themselves.